brought along an expert, somebody who knows labor law inside out. And he's going to have a wonderful conversation with me today. So if you look on the screen, you'll see that I have my guest, Nathan Cottle. Hi, Nathan. Lovely to have you here.
Hi there.
I see you put a mask on.
Yes, I came inside here and here, but the door is written, no mask, no entry. And I thought, wait, I can't come into this venue without a mask. I put on a mask. Is it not right? Should I not be having a mask on?
Look here, you really being creative, because the mask that we're talking about is usually the mask over the nose and the mouth.
Oh, and the mouth. But you see, that's the whole problem. And when we read things, especially in labor relations, we misinterpret these things and we read it to the way we want to read it. And it comes out all wrong and we apply it incorrectly. And most probably that's why I put on the mask instead of putting on a mask that covers my nose and my mouth. So let us do this.
Here we go. Yeah. So there you can hear, guys, that Nathan just did a wonderful illustration here of how we misinterpret the law. We don't apply the law. So we're going to dive straight into discussing SGB remuneration or salary issues. So Nathan, just on one of the guys on the channel, the Facebook channel, asked me about salary scales. So can we speak about that? Are governing bodies also supposed to have policy on remuneration and on their salary scales?
Let's start with the salary scales.
Okay.
You know, to establish a salary scale, there's going to be a bit of a challenge, you know, if because we got at institutions, the governing bodies will have post level 1, post level 2, HODs, principals, general assistant 1, general assistants 2, general foremen, administrators, and then senior administrators. So it's going to be a bit challenging for them. Maybe at the X Model C schools, they'll be able to do that. But at our township schools, I doubt it whether they'll be able to. But what they can have an entry-level salary.
Okay.
A policy on an entry-level salary. So if a general assistant 1, they need that service, that will maybe be 8,000 rand. They perhaps need a post-level 1 teacher in whatever subject, that will be 25,000. You know, a policy on it and how we are going to, what's the process like they have in the state. They have you send your applications into Cape Town, they take it out of the box, they sort it out there, they send it back to the governing bodies, and the governing bodies open it, that whole process. Something very similar to that, but with taking out all the red tape, have a policy like that in terms of the appointment of the person.
Yeah.
Because it's important that you don't have a different process. I know it's going a bit off from the salary, but it is connected with the salary. So at one point, you won't have, when you interview the post-level 1 teacher for history, you're using this formula, but in 6 months' time, you need an administrator, and the process will take a different turn. Now, we understand there will be different questions, but we just can't have a different process. So saying that about the salary, that is a bit challenging to have a salary scale.
Okay.
I think what governing bodies need to do, they first, as an employer, they first and foremost need to comply to pay their employees in terms of the national minimum wage dispensation and directive that has been issued by the Minister of Labor. And that minimum salary is 21.69 Rand an hour. If we can't comply with that, I can't see why we would want the salary scale. I think if we can comply with the mere basics, and then we can move on to salary scales and other things that's similar to the state.
Okay.
But try to comply with the 21.69 per hour as proclaimed by the Minister of Labor in March this year.
Yes. So if I must just summarize what you said, is they need policy, but the policy, I would think the policy must be part of the human resource policy. So they must have some policy within that policy about remuneration. And you suggested that they must at least reflect the minimum that they will pay for a particular post. And
Yes.
yeah, so we'll speak about the actual funding for those posts. And then you mentioned that critical is that they do comply with the minimum wage. That even if they don't have current policy on remuneration, that they need to stick to the minimum basic wage, which
Yes.
is
Quite correct.
21.69.
2169. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, that we've got. So Nathan, just for because people ask this question, so when we talk about salary scales, we're basically saying that because the governing body is an independent employer and they must also have policy on how they're going to pay their workers or their employees, they must have policy on how they're going to determine those salaries. So
Yes.
they must look at, for example, what the job is. They must look at the qualifications that the person needs. They have to look at the experience, and they have to look at what's the other one? Experience and responsibilities.
Yes.
So they have
Yes.
to look at those factors and then say, right, so based on that, what is the minimum salary? Picking up on your point, what is the minimum salary we can pay? Because this is the funding we get for these SGB posts. And so the funding just comes from school fees or from fundraising or donations that are made, right? And based on that funding, we can only afford to pay the minimum salary as they will project. And then, of course, the important point that you mentioned is that minimum salary should not be lower than the basic wage as prescribed by the Labour Act.
Yes.
Did I summarize that correctly?
Yes, which is
Okay.
21.69.
Which is 21.69. Just calculate that. So if
Per
somebody
hour.
gets, per hour. So if somebody works a normal working day, gets 21.69 per hour, what will that more or less be per month?
3,000, nearly 3,500.
Okay, so nobody should be earning under, if they're working a full month, at least a full month, and they must earn at least 3,000 rand.
At least 3,500 rand.
Okay.
For the minimum.
Yeah. Do you think that is being applied at our schools, for example?
No, I know about schools, Sharon, that's paying the governing body is paying their staff 1,200. I mean, that is so absurd, so absurd. I mean, we talk about we've been marginalized and economically, and because we're a school of color, we have been shortchanged here, we've been shortchanged there. But you know, our very schools of color is taking away an economical sustenance from their own people, if I can put it in that way. Not wanting to make a political statement, but now you're paying him 1,200. Aren't you doing the same that you're complaining about that's happening to you? That you are shortchanged infrastructure, we haven't got enough teachers, we haven't got enough this. You're paying 1,200. Imagine somebody out like that must travel from, let's look at Mitchell's Plain. We all know Mitchell's Plain. If he must travel from, let's say, from Tafelberg to Westridge, maybe he must take 2 taxis. It's 20 rand in and 20 rand out. It's 40 rand for the day. That's just traveling. So 1,200 is not on. And if they do that, and which I know they are doing, there are schools paying 1,200 rand. The governing bodies are paying them that. What happens if this individual decides he or she wants to lodge a complaint with the Department of Labor? And he goes to the Department of Labor and he says, look at you, I'm earning 1,200 rand, and this is absurd. The person doesn't know about the minimum wage agreement, and he says, I'm earning 1,200. Immediately, the Department of Labor will launch the inspectors to the institution, get hold of the governing body, send them a letter and say, look at here, we're coming to see if there's compliance at your school. Not only the salary, but everything that an employer should be accountable for at the workplace. And that results to fines and a host of other things for the governing body.
And I like, yes, So by by making yourself guilty of an unfair labor practice, by really exploiting your workers, you also run the risk of having that compliance officer coming out and then doing an extensive, comprehensive investigation of your workplace.
Quite correct. Quite correct. Quite correct. And then if you don't comply, now you're already not complying with the 2169 rand per hour. Now the fact that you don't comply with this, you don't comply with that, you don't comply with that, and it just gets all bigger and all bigger, and the fines become huge. They're not going to look at the institution and say, oh, this is a school. It's a workplace, because the governing body is an employer. So the rules apply the same.
Yeah, I like that.
There's no different rules.
Yeah, I like that point that you just made now, Nathan, that SGB should see the school as a workplace because they are the employers.
They are the employers.
That's a powerful point. Yeah. And yeah, so when we're talking salary scales, and I know there are teachers who work at our poorer schools, the township schools, community schools, and so they're earning far less than their counterparts, say, for example, at a wealthier school. But I think those SGB employees must understand that the money or the funding they use to pay the salaries will come from various sources, and the chief source will be school fees. So those schools that earn that collect more school fees, they are able to pay their employees more. So their salary scale will be different to, say, for example, a salary scale that an SGB in Mitchell's Plain or Guguletu will have in place, right? So your wealthier schools will probably turn out to be closer to the education department salary scale. So that is just the way economics work. So the employees, if you are SGB employee, then you must bear that in mind, that you cannot expect to be paid the same as an education department teacher, for example, because your employer, the SGB, is only collecting funding from people who are either unemployed or they cannot pay the kind of money that a wealthier parent can pay and sending their child to another school. Okay?
Quite correct.
Yeah, which is a bit unfair, because I think we discussed offline that education is a social responsibility. It's the state's responsibility. So the state is supposed to see that there are sufficient teachers at the school to enable teachers to offer quality education. They must see that we have enough support staff, like your general workers, like your admin staff at the school. So because the state has a way of calculating the learner-teacher ratio, only a certain number of teachers will be appointed at the school or allocated to a school. And so the SGB will have a challenge because those teachers are not enough. So they want to bring in additional staff to help the teachers deliver quality education. And that's the challenge. So I think colleagues who are teaching at schools where they can't get paid much have one of two choices, really. They must either try to get into an education department post, or they must try and find an alternative job, or the same job at an alternative school. But that's a whole political issue, right? So we can't really blame the SGBs if they are paying you a decent salary based on their funding. But if they are underpaying you and they are getting in enough money, then I think you raised that at the beginning, then that's exploitation. That would be seen as unfair, right? Yeah, I thought I'll just throw that in.
Yes, and then also if I must be working at the institution with the governing body, and I'm getting they say, Nathan, we can only give you 2169. I say, no, it's fine. I'm desperate. I'll take the 2169. But they start eventually paying me 1,200. And my contract is done after a month, after 6 months, after a year, contract is done, and I'm at home. And I realize, hey, but you should have actually been paying me 3,500, only paid me 1,200. I have the right then in terms of Section 73. The CCMA has got jurisdiction now to arbitrate matters where it relates to salary. Now, they didn't have it before, but they do have it now. So I'm done working. So I go to the CCMA, I declare a dispute. I say, look at here, this governing body at school X only paid me 1,200. they should have been paying me 21.69, and you guys know this, that's the rule. They will take my case and I will succeed.
Sure. Yeah.
And the CCMA will bring it a compliance order, an award, but in terms of a compliance that the governing body should be complying to. And that can also result into a huge amount of money paid to me. Imagine if I worked a year and they only paid me 1,200 and I get the award in my favor. It's a huge amount of money.
Yes.
You understand? And then simultaneously, I can still go to the Department of Labor. At the same time, I can still go to the Department of Labor and lodge a complaint there, because it's two different things. The one, it's unfair labor practice, you paid me too short. That's what the CCMA. The non-compliance is the issue by the Department of Labor. So that governing body will have a tough time dealing with those two issues simultaneously.
Okay. So it was listening, Nathan, you just gave good advice. So it's not just a matter of underpaying, but you're going to run into serious legal issues, and it's going to cost you far more. So hopefully the people who are listening on the, listening to the discussion will go back and check to see whether they are at least paying the minimum wage.
Yes.
Even if they don't have that policy in place yet, they must ensure that they are complying with the Labour Relations Act in terms of the minimum wage. Okay.
And just for interest sake, Sharon, just for interest sake, the only people that's excluded, I'm going to list only a few people that's excluded from the minimum wage is the security service, is the army, and is the intelligence.
Yeah.
They don't fall under that. The rest of us, we fall under that.
Yeah. Yep. Correct. And that, Nathan, and that's why I like the fact that you're raising all these things, because I find that there's a lack of knowledge out there. And so it's not that people are doing things deliberately, but they are not realizing how they need to understand the legal context in which we're working, and that they must ensure that there's social justice regardless of the economic situation of the school. And so that is really a very good point that you raised. Just on, did we cover that point extensively now about the salary scales? We'll wrap up afterwards. And of course, you spoke about the minimum wage, and you spoke about what the consequences are if you are in non-compliance with those legal requirements, right? Nathan? Now, let's say, so the governing body is paying the employees, and so I want you to talk about the statutory deductions that must take place.
Okay. So with every employee that's employed in South Africa, tax must be deducted.
Okay.
Now, we all know that tax is not the employer's challenge, it's the employee's challenge, but the employee must be certain that the employer is deducting the pay as you earn, the PAYE, they're deducting that. If they don't deduct that, there's challenges. So they must deduct that, they must deduct UIF. UIF, from my salary of my 3,500, 1% must be paid to the Department of Labor, and 1% from the employer, from the governing body, must be paid to the Department of Labor. And that is a two-way street there, because there are so many benefits that spin off from the UIF. If I get injured at work, the UIF, the Department of Labor, in terms of the WCA claims, the injury on duty, I will be paid. The Department of Labor will pay for my hospitalization or my treatment. If I'm a female and I'm pregnant and I go off, I will get maternity leave money, as they commonly say it, maternity leave money for the period that I'm at home, because I'm not going to earn a salary by my employer for that time. If my contract should end and I'm not working anymore, at least I can go then to the Department of Labor and claim unemployment fund. Take my necessary documents, register myself, and every month I will get X amount of money, which will sustain me while I'm waiting for another job. So you're also looking after your employee if you pay UIF. Maybe not looking after that that's going to materialize now. But in the long term, it's going to benefit for the employee. Because what do you do if an employee falls off a ladder, or he slips in the corridor and he hurts, breaks, damages his leg, and then he's going to be at home? Then you must pay him for that 8 months that he's going to be at home, because he cannot draw by the Department of Labor, where you could have been free from that. They could have paid and everybody would have been okay. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Of course.
Yeah.
And I think many SGBs learned the lesson last year, where they discovered, and a lot of other businesses, but we're talking about schools now. So the SGBs weren't paying the UIF, and those very employees couldn't go and, draw money or get some funding from the UIF. So that was a major challenge. So we added to people's pressure, right? Yes, so now I think people have learned their lesson. Hopefully all SGBs know they must pay UIF. They must deduct the UIF. So I just wanted to speak to TERS, Nathan, that temporary employment relief scheme. Temporary employment relief scheme, TERS.
Yes. So TERS has been introduced by the Department of Labor. And they are actually saying, look at here, because of COVID, like now we're in level 4, TERS has opened again. Because the Department of Labor realizes that there are certain sectors that just cannot go to work. And if you can't go to work, you're not going to get salary from your employer, because they're not getting money in. So the Department of Labor says, if you register yourself with TERS and you're an employee and an employer, we will give you, as an example, we'll give you 2/3 of your money, and we ask the employees, we plead on them that they put something by, so that every month an employee will at least have something to carry him through while he's sitting at home and earning no money, because he or she just cannot be paid. So TERS has opened now. If employers register their employees now, for those that can't work in level 4, they will get their first payout by the 19th. At least it's something of July. If they register today online. The only thing is the employer is not going to get the money. The money is going to go to the employee into her or she's banking account. So I'll urge governing bodies, if they are faced with a situation like that. Remember in level 5 last year, all school will close about 5 weeks or something like that, and schools couldn't pay them. We assisted a number of schools here in my area and in other areas. We assisted them to register their employees, and these people got money and everybody was okay. And it's also shows away from the governing body that we are looking after our people. No matter how little they're getting from TERS, but we're looking after our people. We're making a way for them.
Yeah, wonderful. And SGBs must understand that responsibility, that they need to care for their employees, right? And they must make sure that they take advantage of all these, like the funding that government is making available. Thanks, Nathan. I'm listening here and quite enjoying what I'm hearing. So let's move on to the last point under the salary matters discussion. I want you to speak to the fact of payslips. Must SGB employees receive payslips?
They must. If you look at section 33, now I'm not mentioning the section because I want to say I'm smart, but people must go look it up.
Exactly.
And each one teach one,
There we go.
So section 33 says, there must be payslips. And there's various reasons for payslips. One, if I get my payslip, I can see how many hours I work. If I get my payslip, I can see how many hours overtime I work. If I look at my payslip, the amount of money I'm supposed to be getting for that month, for that week, for that day will be on the payslip. So it's a good thing. Then, if I want to go buy a microwave at Game and I want to open an account, I can take my payslip, open the account, buy myself a microwave. So socioeconomically, I'm also being lifted up by my governing body. and by my employer, because now I can buy the mic. I could never buy a microwave, and I can't buy it cash either. But I can at least open an account because I got a payslip to prove. And if there comes any challenge relating to employment and the payment of monies, I've been paid short, or I've been paid too much, or I've been paid this, or I've been paid that, we can always refer to the payslip, the employee and the employer, for both parties. We can do that. And so it's critically important that employer, and I'll suggest that when they do issue payslip, they issue it before you get paid. Let's say you get paid the end of the month. Let's say a week before the end of the month. They have a dummy run, and each one's payslip is emailed, and I can check my payslip and see, okay, yes, now if there's any queries, any challenges, any omissions on my payslip, I can always go to the paymaster, go to the financial officer and say, look at here, there's a problem here. You paid me too short. You should have paid me X amount of overtime instead of the amount that you're giving me. So it will save both parties at the end of the day when it comes to the payslip. So it's critically important. It's a must. It's not an option.
Yeah,
it's a must. It's not that you may give them a payslip. You must give them a payslip. You must deduct UIF.
Yes,
you must pay me 2169. You must. It's mandatory.
Yes, no, for sure. So I think that, if we must summarize the three key points we spoke about, we're speaking about governing body remuneration or salaries. And we said, we spoke about that you need some policy, a basic policy of on the remuneration, on the money that you are paying your employees. And you need to, at the minimum, according to Nathan, is reflect the minimum salary that the employee can expect depending on what job that person is doing. And then, of course, you cannot compromise the minimum wage of 21 Rand 69 cents an hour. Okay, that you need to comply with that. Then we spoke about, Nathan, we spoke about the compulsory deductions, those legal deductions, pay as you earn, your tax that must be paid, and of course your UIF, if you are working for at least 24 hours per month, you need to pay in UIF, and your employer must also pay in the 1%. Nathan explained, so you can rewind and listen to that section again. And then, of course, Nathan, you spoke about the payslips that are also legally required. It's not a nice to have. Every employee should receive a payslip, and Nathan explained the benefits of giving your employees a payslip as well. But it's not, we're not trying to persuade you what the benefits are. It's first the legal requirement, and then we also, I think Nathan explained how you as employer and the employee can benefit when you have a payslip, right? And then, of course, Nathan, typical labor expert here, quoted here from the Basic Conditions of Employment Act. So I would strongly advise you to go and read at least the summary of the Basic Conditions of Employment Act. And of course, you can look at the Labor Relations Act and then equip yourself so that you understand what your responsibilities are as an employer, and not just follow your own, take your own direction and listen to what other people are saying. Go check what the law says and then see if you can apply that.
And don't put on a mask when you should be putting on a mask.
Yes. Yeah, don't. So if you have problems with interpretation, then speak to people like Nathan. But I'll ask Nathan just to give us some contact details, because Nathan is the ideal resource if you're in school governing body that you can tap into. Right, so Nathan, we've covered most of the areas that we wanted to cover. Is there anything you wanted to speak about? We spoke offline about something very important. And I hope you can remember what we spoke about, the employee handbook.
Yes.
But do you want to just speak about that for us?
Yes. I will strongly suggest to governing bodies, to employers, or governing bodies, that they get themselves or have themselves crafted. I can also do it. An employee handbook. The handbook will include, I'm just giving it will probably contain most probably over 100 pages, but you must remember some documents are hefty. The use of company equipment, something like that. An harassment policy. Use of company transport. Some schools have buses, buckies and so on. A racial policy, evacuation policy, because you have employees at the institution or at the workplace that sometimes need to be evacuated. Absenteeism policy, and most probably your notices. And when I say notices, it's very broad, but notices like your warning letters, your notice to attend a disciplinary hearing, your notices that you're going to work short time, which you can because of circumstance, you're going to work short time. A notice to inform you that we're going to investigate you because of certain activities that took place, you stole or whatever, you frauded. A substantive substance policy when it comes to drugs, incapacity policies. These are utmost and critical important documents, to name but a few. Because you see, if things go a bit haywire, then you'll always be asked, have you got a policy on that? No. Now it becomes a problem. Now it's the gray area because you don't have a policy, but you expect that me to have understood what I must do and what I should not do. Yeah. So, but I'm quite capable of drafting employee handbooks for them.
Yeah.